back. Still watching Business Morning here on Channels Television. Now, to curb inflation, we've seen central banks globally continue to raise interest rates. And obviously, Nigeria is not immune to it, which means that there's a surge in the cost of servicing bank loans. Well, not good for businesses, not good for manufacturers, because they have to pay more. But what about the banks? Let's have a little bit of understanding from that perspective with the Managing Director of EdFin Microfinance, Mrs. Bumi Lawson, joins us virtually. Good morning, Mrs. Lawson. Thank you so much for your time. Happy holidays.
Thank you very much. Good. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you, Mrs. Lawson.
Everyone.
Good morning. So we hear businesses, those who have loans to service, complaining of this hike in interest rate because obviously they have to cough out more money than they used to. But how is it affecting the other side of the divide, which is you guys, the banks?
Yeah, so the economy, those economic indicators are tough. Inflation is going up, so CBN is increasing the MPR rate. So lending cost is also high because when you look at the value for money, you have to lend to make sure that you cover your cost of borrowing, cost of operations as well. So a lot of SMEs, yes, typically raise their interest rates are high, but it is the factors in the economy that contributes to that. Some of the things that some banks have done, including my bank, is to have separate sort of loan funds for different types of companies. So you may have some concessionary loans. So for instance, when we fund education, we have a loan that gives a single digit interest rate, but that's only for concessionary schools, affordable, where we think that we are providing support. But typically, you will find that interest rates in most recent terms have certainly gone up. As the MPR has been increased by the central bank, lending rates have to go up. Thank you.
Yeah, interesting that you mentioned education because I think 2 weeks ago I did speak to an entrepreneur in the education sector here in Nigeria, and of course he did talk about the squeeze that they are also facing. How much of funding or how much of demand do you get from the education sector?
Yeah, so we get significant amounts of demand. Nigeria's population is growing, so the demand for education is increasing. And while government is investing, somewhat in the education sector, is not able to meet the demand given the increased growth rate that is happening and the demand for services. So banks like us that focus on education provide loans to schools, to the education sector, EdTech, their vendors, to be able to enable them increase access to education so they build more classrooms or provide electronic training. They're able to pay their teachers, especially during the holidays when they are not getting school fees and things like that. So funding education increases access to education, and it is critical for economic development. As someone said, they've never seen an illiterate, wealthy country. So you need more of our population who have access to schools, especially primary and secondary, to be able to learn to read and write. And so funding is really in demand. But COVID did put a bumper on the education sector. During COVID, education, schools were closed down and so on. And because of the economic hardships, a lot of parents are not able to afford the school fees, especially in the private sector. So even the public sector now has seen an increased demand for the school because education, at least basic education, is free. So the education sector is somewhat struggling, but I do feel that once the economy starts to grow back, you will find increased demand for education finance to build schools, but also to fund education, including those who want to even access education abroad. You want to study in any of the top universities abroad, there's funding also that is being provided to enable you pay your school fees, travel, and so on and so forth. So for us, it's all about providing access to education. So now we see more increased demand for consumer loans, which is to pay tuition fees. Before, a lot of our demand was for the schools where you are building more classrooms and putting in technology for schools to be able to serve their peoples.
In essence, you're encouraging the japa from Nigeria. And I'm sure your rate is really high. Microfinance banks are not very friendly.
Well, it is affordable. In fact, what we did was to partner with international institutions that do international student loans. So you only repay the loan after you graduate and you are working. So whether you come back. So one of the things I would say is true that people look at the Japa syndrome as controversial. Is it good or is not good? And I normally ask them to look at Nigerians that we have in diaspora today. Would they say they are not contributing to the Nigerian economy? They are significantly, both in remittances, but also in the acquisition of knowledge, bringing back skills, and even better methodology to work. China and India did it. It's also projected that by 2030, Nigeria will be the third largest supplier of international students worldwide. So these are things that I feel that will continue to ensure that the demand for international education continues to grow. So that's and I feel that Nigerians in diaspora have even given back to Nigeria. There are some I could name. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala came back and became our coordinating minister for finance. Segun Agaga, so many people. We did a study of the largest companies in Nigeria, those quoted on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and 65% of them acquired an international degree, either first degree or postgraduate degree internationally. So it has benefit, long-term benefits. It depends on how we use it. Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Lawson, trying to change our perspective that Japa is not always wrong. But okay, thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that fresh perspective. Managing Director of EdFeed Microfinance, Mrs. Bumi Lawson. Enjoy the rest of your holiday.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, Ini.
All right,
Bye.
You're welcome.